What's up everyone? Justin here with another video. So for a lot of people, Japanese can be a difficult language to learn. Between kanji, having multiple readings, having to navigate different levels of formality in the language, as well as just having three separate writing systems between hiragana, katakana, and kanji. But luckily, along the way, I've had some really great teachers that have helped me learn Japanese. That said, when I came to Japan, there were definitely things with regards to the language that I wish I'd known before coming here. So I hope everyone can learn from my experiences and study these things before you come to Japan. With that said, let's get started. The first Japanese phrase I wish I'd known before coming to Japan is actually Namabiru o hitotsu, which means one beer please. Okay, but for real though, I wish I'd known how to count objects better in Japanese before I came. And it might sound kind of weird, but counting objects in Japanese is actually kind of difficult. Depending on the type of object, the suffix after the number will change. So if you want to count dogs, it becomes ipiki, nipiki, sanpiki. But if you're counting like small objects like a plate or something, it becomes ichimai, nimai, sanmai. And it really changes depending on the object. And then even for people, it's hitori, futari for one person and two people. And so counting in Japanese is really important because when you go to like an izakaya, which I did when I first came to Japan, the food comes in little small plates. So at this one izakaya I found, there were these grapes wrapped in bacon that I really liked. But when you ordered them, you only got like one skewer. So if you wanted more than one, you had to basically tell them budo bacon or meats, or 3 of the great bacons please. And this is also handy for drinks, because you can say, if everyone wants beer, you can say namabiru o yotsu, or 4 beers please. Alright, so now that I've taught you how to order beer in namabiru o hitotsu, namabiru o futatsu, works with most other drinks, just sub out the namabiru for whatever drink you want. So now you're ready to go out and meet people at a bar or an izakaya. And so you meet someone and things are going well. But you want some alone time with this person. What can you say? You can tell them kyukei shioka, which means let's take a break together. But when you say kyukei shioka when you're out drinking, it's kind of implied that you want to go to a hotel with that person to, just sleep and take a rest. I'm sure that's all people do at a hotel. But that said, if you use this phrase, your results may vary. You may get the results you're hoping for, and you might go to a hotel with that person. Or you could get slapped and that person runs away. Okay, on to an actual serious one. The next word is shokugo, which means after the meal. And so I put this one on the list because of, again, a personal experience when I first came to Japan. I had this cafe next to my apartment that I really loved going to. And the first couple of times I went, I was confused because my coffee always got brought out after my food. And it wasn't until about the 3rd or 4th time I went where I was finally asked, Isho to shokugo dochi ni saremasu ka? Which basically means, do you want your coffee with your meal or after? Isho is together and shokugo being after. And at that point I realized, isho means together, so shokugo must mean after my meal, and that's why my coffee kept getting brought after my meal. So if you go to cafes a lot, this is definitely a useful phrase to know, shokugo. Just because you're definitely going to be asked this at least once while you're in Japan if you go to a cafe. The next thing on my list is less of a phrase and more of an idea, but I wish I'd known more keigo or polite speech before I came to Japan. So when you go shopping, visit a doctor's office, or any number of things in Japan, the workers will often use keigo or polite speech. And it was something that I never really studied before coming to Japan. And it sounds a bit different from normal casual Japanese that you would speak with your friends. So things like omachi kudasai means please wait. When you're talking about yourself, you would use itashimasu instead of the normal shimasu. Or teiru becomes te irashaimasu. And those kind of things. They're very useful to know. If you're just visiting Japan, or depending on your job and how formal it is, you may not even need to be able to use keigo. But definitely for just navigating day-to-day life in Japan, it's useful to at least understand the phrases. And usually you can pick them up if you just study them a little bit ahead of time, look them up online, and then over time, from just hearing them over and over again while you're out in Japan, you'll eventually pick them up. Like, I've been living here for 2 years, and I can understand most keigo when it's spoken to me, but I still have a hard time recreating it myself because I just never use it with my friends. And even at work with other teachers, I typically don't use Japanese like I would use with my friends, but I don't use super formal Japanese either. That said, though, a very useful, polite phrase that you should definitely know and be able to say if you're coming to Japan to work is osaki ni shitsurei shimasu. And saki means ahead or forward, and shitsurei shimasu means excuse me. So in the context of a Japanese company, it's kind of apologizing for leaving work if there are still other people working. Because in Japanese culture, it can be seen kind of rude if you're leaving work before someone else when they still have work to do. And if you say osaki ni shitsurei shimasu, and then usually your coworkers and everyone will say otsukare-sama desu. Depending on how formal the company is, they'll say those phrases back. And definitely if one of your coworkers leaves before you do and they say osaki ni shitsurei shimasu, definitely a good idea for you to say otsukare-sama desu to them. And it kind of looks like this. Osaki ni shitsurei shimasu. あ、もう帰る? 早くない? とりあえずお疲れ様です. Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about for this video is something I enjoy doing, which is pretending I don't speak Japanese when I clearly do. And so the basic phrase for I don't speak Japanese is Nihongo wakarimasen. And if you want to make it a little more casual, you can say Nihongo wakaranai. So the trick to convince people that you do know Japanese, even though you're saying you don't, is to say it in that area's dialect. So in Ehime, it's Ioben, so I would say Nihongo wakaran. If you're in Osaka, where there's Kansai Ben, you would say Nihongo wakarahen. This kind of actually feeds into something else that I think is kind of important or something useful to know before you come to Japan, which is if you're going to be working and staying in one spot for an extended period of time, it's not a bad idea to learn that area's dialect. Anyways, their Japanese kind of deviates from formal textbook Japanese, just because speaking that area's dialect is usually seen as more friendly and casual and will help you connect with friends and people you meet. And this is kind of what I was talking about when I said Japanese has multiple levels of formality. Like the keigo I talked about earlier, I would never use that with my friends because I would come off as really cold and kind of distant, as opposed to using the dialect where I come off as really friendly. And I would never use a word like wakaran, which is Ioben, with my boss at work, so the principal at my school. Alright, thanks for checking out my video today, everyone. These were some of the words, phrases, and things I wish I'd known about the Japanese language before I came to Japan. If there's any words or phrases you want to know in Japanese, please let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Alright, see you next time. Mata ne.